Statement. Minister Fahnbulleh.
Madam Deputy Speaker, with permission, I would like to make a statement about the Energy Company Obligation 4 and Great British Installation Scheme. I want to inform the House that the Government has identified an emerging issue of poor quality solid wall insulation installed under these two schemes we inherited from the last Government. The Energy Company Obligation 4 began in April 2022 and the Great British Installation Scheme began in May 2023. Around 65,000 households have had solid wall insulation installed under these schemes. In October 2024, Trustmark, the independent body which oversees tradespeople working in homes, did routine audits and found significant examples of solid wall insulation under these schemes that did not meet the requisite standard. At this point, Trustmark began suspending a number of the installers responsible. After officials in our department were made aware of the issues, they asked Trustmark to conduct a much fuller audit, which concluded in mid-December. Officials informed ministers at the start of December about the situation and that early findings suggested that there were widespread cases of poor quality installation that did not meet the required standard. Since that point, we have consulted with certification bodies who are responsible for overseeing the work and the building safety regulator to understand the true scale and nature of the emerging problem. Based on this, it became clear to me that there is a serious systemic issue around Eco4 and GBIS solid wall insulation. This ranges from minor problems such as missing or incomplete paperwork to more major problems such as exposed insulation or poor ventilation, which, if not fixed over time, could lead to damp and mould. As more poor quality work has come to light, a total of 39 businesses have now been suspended from installing new solid wall insulation in people's homes. I can inform the House that suspended installers will not be able to deliver new solid wall insulations on any government scheme until they have fulfilled their obligation to put issues right. Additional on-site audits are being conducted as I speak to get a full picture of the scale of the problem and identify households who have been affected. While the auditing work continues at pace, we have put in place a comprehensive plan for immediate repair and remediation where it is needed. And let me be absolutely clear about this. Installers must fund any repair work themselves and carry it out as soon as possible. Consumers should not be asked to pay a penny to the cost of getting these problems fixed. We have instructed Ofgem, the energy regulator, to oversee this work, and they will work with Trustmark and certification bodies to ensure it is delivered at speed. Non-compliant work found under the audits have already been or in the process of being fixed. And in the very small number of cases where Trustmark audits found health and safety concerns, such as wires not being fitted properly, the problems are being fixed urgently with an expectation that they should be resolved within 24 hours. Critically, I would like to reassure the House that additional monitoring and checks are being put in place to ensure future solid wall insulations are done to the requisite standard. It is important for me to say that based on what we know so far, we believe the scale of the issues we have discovered are specific to solid wall insulations under Eco4 and GBIS. We know there are stronger systems of checks and balances in place for other schemes which involve local authorities or housing providers, social housing providers, so we don't expect to see the same scale of problem. However, the Government is reviewing the quality of solid wall insulations in other schemes. I will update the House on the results of this work as soon as they are available. And we will continue to require urgent remediation of any issues found across all government energy efficiency schemes. Now, I know that this will be concerning news for families who have had solid wall insulation fitted through these schemes. Getting this sorted out for these customers is our #1 priority. Since I was informed of the problems, I have worked with Ofgem to develop a full plan to assess all affected properties and get any problems fixed. Let me set out what our plans means for these families. Ofgem will now oversee quality checks on all solid wall insulations installed under either of these schemes to identify households that might be affected. This will begin with every measure being examined over the coming weeks by qualified professionals, which will include looking at photographic evidence. If a quality check raises issues, the certification body that oversees the installer or trustmark will arrange an inspection of the property and fix any problems as soon as possible. Installers will be required to provide evidence to trustmark that issues have been properly fixed. And let me reiterate our assurance that where solid wall installation under these schemes have not been done right, consumers should not have to pay a penny. We are very clear that the responsibility for finding and fixing any problem lies with those who carried out the work. Consumers do not need to take any action now, but given the inevitable concerns amongst those who have had these measures installed, all households with solid wall insulation fitted under these schemes will be sent a letter from Ofgem in the next 3 weeks, which will set out the steps we are taking and how they can proactively raise concerns. And we're setting up a gov.uk advice page specifically for those affected. So the government is moving fast to protect households. But I have to be honest with the House. These issues are the result of years of failure in a system that must be reformed. Home upgrades, we believe, are one of the best tools to get bills down for good and deliver warm homes for people. That is why our Warm Homes Plan will cut bills for millions of households by upgrading their homes, including with solar panels, batteries, heat pumps and energy efficiency measures like double glazing and loft insulation. But the government has inherited a fragmented and confusing system of protections for people wanting to insulate their homes. Too many organisations with different roles and responsibilities. Not enough clarity for consumers about who to turn to if things go wrong. Problems that should have been picked up earlier have been missed. The system is in dire need of reform. So while it is the installers that are responsible for poor quality installations, they have been allowed to operate in a failed system which has left some households exposed to bad practices. The system can no longer command confidence. That is why we are committed to overhauling it and driving up the quality and protecting consumers through the Warm Homes Plan. We will look at the entire landscape, from how installers work in people's homes, are certified and monitored, to where homeowners turn to for rapid action and enforcement if things go wrong. And we will ensure that there is more of a guide in mind overseeing upgrades across the system. The steps I have set out demonstrate that the government will do whatever it takes to protect consumers. We will regularly report back to the House about the steps being taken. We have set up a process for colleagues across the House to raise concerns about their constituents. And above all, we are determined to ensure families are never let down in this way again. We will put in place a robust system of compliance, audit and regulation so consumers can have confidence to take up the offer of upgrading their homes. Madam Deputy Speaker, we will do what is necessary to ensure that families can have warmer homes and lower bills. And I commend this statement to the House.
I call Shadow Minister Andrew Bowie.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for advance sight of her statement and indeed for taking the time to meet me prior to her making the statement this morning. The ECO scheme and the Great British Insulation Scheme were set up because we know that improving the energy efficiency of homes is one of the best ways to cut energy bills and keep people warm. This is especially the case for those who are in fuel poverty. When we took office in 2010, just 14% of homes in this country had an energy performance rating of A to C. Today it is around 50%. And for social housing, we went from 24% in 2010 to 70% today. This is a record that we are proud of, reducing bills for households and keeping families warm. Almost half the measures installed under the GBIS scheme have been to low-income households. Solid wall insulation is a small proportion of the overall work that the ECO schemes and the Great British Insulation Scheme undertook. Of the work undertaken by the schemes, the vast majority of installations have been cavity wall and loft insulation, alongside smart thermostats and boiler upgrades under the ECO scheme. However, it is deeply concerning that examples of substandard solid wall insulation have been identified in some of the installations under the schemes. We, of course, support the action that the Minister has announced today, with Ofgem given responsibility for overseeing the repairs and remediation, and is right that there are additional on-site audits being conducted to inform action moving forward. I thank Trustmark for the work they have done to identify examples of poor quality solid wall insulation, and we also welcome that there will be a review into the quality of solid wall insulation under other schemes. It is absolutely right that installers must fund the repair work and ensure that affected households are remedied as soon as possible. Nobody should have to live in a house with damp or mould as a result of poor quality insulation. So in addition to the action the Minister outlined in her statement, could she please answer the following? Have the audits so far identified what proportion of the overall solid wall installations are affected by poor quality work? Can she confirm that all 39 of the companies which have been suspended do still exist, and by what mechanism they will be required to remedy their work? What action is being taken to make sure that remedial work is of the required standard to ensure consumers are protected from yet more poor quality work? And what action is she taking to ensure that everyone who had solid wall insulation installed under the schemes is informed promptly and in full, and that nobody will be missed? Will she publish a full list of the 39 companies suspended from the scheme for carrying out poor quality work, and has the Department considered taking legal action against them? Madam Deputy Speaker, on all sides of the House, we want to ensure that families have warm and comfortable homes which are efficient and cheap to run, and she has our assurance that we will work cross-party to remediate those affected.
Minister.
Thank you to the Honourable Member for his response. I'm glad that there is consensus across the House that energy efficiency measures and home upgrades are key to delivering homes that are warmer and for lowering bills, and that all members are supportive, I hope, of the action that we are taking as a government. In answer to his specific questions, we are still conducting audits to get a full sense of the picture. From the sample that has been done already, and I should stress the sample was geared towards installations that we thought was most risky and installers that we thought were most risky, we're seeing a significant proportion of those having major issues, which is why we are taking the action that we're taking. Of the 39 installers that have been suspended, we are working through certification bodies and Trustmark to require them to go into households and remediate the work. And it is worth saying that in the cases where we have already done an audit, that is happening. Installers, the vast majority of them, want to do the right thing. They want to do a good job. Where this is being flagged, they're going in and they're repairing the work. Where we think there are problems, we have a set of mechanisms in place in order to make sure that they are delivering their obligation, and we will have the guarantee system that acts as a backstop. And then critically on the question of how we're ensuring that both where remediation work has been done, it's been done up to the right standard, but critically, future solid wall installations must be done up to a better standard. We're putting in place additional spot checks across the piece to make sure that where work has been remediated, we are checking that to make sure that it is the standard that's required, and critically, all solid wall installations will be giving more monitoring and checks. Suppliers have committed to doing that so that where people have these happening, they can be confident that it is a much, much better quality and standard that we've seen. And in terms of keeping everyone informed, we will be writing through Ofgem to all households that have had solid wall insulation. We will be doing quality checks on all 65,000 solid wall installations. Now, I should stress the vast majority of these we hope will be okay. We hope it will be minor issues, but we want to do a quality check across the piece. Where there are key issues, the priority for us is getting in, making sure that we are doing a proper inspection of the property and getting it remediated as quickly as possible. Our priority through all of that is the customer, the consumer, that have to have as hassle-free, as stress-free, a cost-free an experience as possible. This should never have happened in the first place. We are determined to get it right and fix it on their behalf.
I call Imran Hussain.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister will know I've long campaigned in this area, and I'm grateful to her for meeting with myself, my honourable friend for Burnley, along with the SSB Victims Support Group earlier last year to discuss the important issues. So I, of course, welcome today the real concrete steps the Minister intends to take in this area, and she will know that many of the victims of the SSB law scandal were directly impacted through faulty cavity wall insulation. But the Minister today outlines concrete steps for solid wall insulation. Can she confirm those actions will also be exactly the same where we're dealing with cavity wall insulation? If not, why not? And secondly, will she also agree to make sure there is compensation available, whether through remedial work or others, for all those impacted by the cavity wall insulation scandal?
Minister.
Thank you to my honourable friend for his avid and consistent campaigning on these issues. As he knows, with the instance of SSB law, there is an ongoing investigation on that at the moment. To his specific question, so any insulation that is done under government schemes, we expect that the system will kick in and respond to that. And we are aware of cases that have been raised to Trustmark and other bodies, and we're working to make sure they're remediated. Where it's not done under government schemes, where we have examples of that, where constituents have taken on insulation schemes that are not within government schemes, there is a different set of mechanisms. We are working with the system to make sure that we are responding to households, because I come back to the fact this is not the fault of individual households. The system isn't working properly. We are going to prioritise government schemes because we have the levers, but we recognise that there is an issue for households that have had schemes done outside of government schemes.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Jess Brown-Fuller.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for advance sight of your statement. I can only imagine the frustration that consumers feel when they go through the quite often complicated process of trying to upgrade their homes to bring down their bills for good, only to be met with substandard work and then a lack of enforcement following. So Liberal Democrats on these benches recognise that the government has inherited a fragmented and confusing system, and that the focus today is on consumers and remedial work affecting the shoddy work that they've received. And I'm glad that the government is committed to ensuring that the onus on that remedial work doesn't land with the consumers in their pockets. So we agree that the system needs complete overhaul, especially since the last Conservative government left the Great British Insulation Scheme. It fell woefully short of the targets that it set for itself, and it supported far too few people, far too slowly, and some that did receive the installations finding it well below the required standard. So can I ask the Minister, if there are faults found with other energy efficiency measures, will the Minister guarantee that consumers will not have to pay a penny for those as well as the ones she's highlighted today? And how soon can consumers expect that their quality checks will be delivered? And will priority be given to those households that are in fuel poverty as well as the elderly and the vulnerable?
Thank you to the honourable member. And again, I'm glad to hear that the honourable member agrees that we need to see a big overhaul of the system. That is absolutely our focus. That is our commitment. In terms of other measures, so other measures under ECO and GBIS, the audits are not finding the scale of systemic problem. So we think that the problem is focused on solid wall insulations in particular. We are doing some stress tests, so we're doing some additional audits of other measures to make sure, but we think there is a specific problem around those measures, and that's what we're focusing on. We are moving at pace to get these remediated. Where we're finding major issues, we're setting expectations that is prioritised and that installers are coming in and remediating as soon as possible. Under the existing PAS framework, remediation where installers haven't put work right has to be done within 12 weeks, and we're setting that expectation so that the system moves at pace in order to respond to consumers. And we will absolutely be looking to prioritise households in fuel poverty and vulnerable households. We're doing two things. We're contacting them, but also we will create the ability for people to reach out if they're worried, if they're vulnerable, so that we can make sure that we are doing the necessary triaging and critically getting into their properties to fix work where it's not been done right.
Oliver Ryan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister sincerely for her great work on this. In the 6 months she's been in, she's made more progress than the last lot did in sort of 14 years, and this has been a serious problem for victims in Burnley. Can I thank her? I'm glad that she's looking at earlier schemes too. Because many homes in Burnley have fallen victim to cowboy builders and failed insulation over several years. So I look forward to her updates on earlier schemes which did need to be actioned by the previous government and weren't and were ignored for an awful long time. Can I particularly also welcome the stronger regulation, the clarity for consumers and a clear process of complaints, which will make a genuine difference. 2 questions, if I may. Will the bans of these particular companies follow the directors of these companies? Because too often what we've seen is companies being established, making forward of these poor insulation, and then they'll go away, extinguish the company and start again somewhere else. And as the member for Bradford East said before, will this cover cavity wall insulation where it's been government backed?
Thank you to the Honourable Member. Thank you for all the work he's done on this and for engaging with me and my department on this. Look, we are aware of instances where companies fold not to deliver on their obligation to remediate work and then set up again. We are putting in place processes through the certification bodies to mitigate that happening so that there is a clear expectation that you won't be taken on by another certification body if you don't get the work right. Our priority at the moment is on solid wall insulation because that's where we think there is an immediate problem within ECO and GBIS. We are aware from members of the House contacting us that there are wider issues that need to be addressed. And I come back to the fact that we understand that the system has not been working for consumers. We understand that the quality, quite frankly, and the quality assurance across the system has been far too fragmented and patchy. And critically, consumer protection has not been underscored in the way that it needs to be. So we are looking to overhaul the system. And we're conscious that there are issues with other schemes, and we're thinking about the best way in which we can resolve those.
Father of the House, Sir Edward Lee.
Could I refer the Minister to the very last word that she said in her statement, that we will ensure that families have lower bills? Always problem with insulation in a country with a massively degraded and older housing stock underlines the vital importance of cheap energy. But here we had a month with virtually no wind, no sun. Green energy, so-called, is producing hardly any of our energy. We're importing energy. We're stopping drilling in the North Sea. We're not building gas-fired power stations. What about old people? Their heating allowance is being taken away, and we are crucifying them with ever higher bills. Meanwhile, China, whose annual increment in emissions is more than our entire emissions, is going on pumping out emissions. Drill baby Trump is pumping out emissions. Why are we crucifying our old people?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. What I would say to the honourable gentleman is the status quo is not fit for purpose. So you say the honourable gentleman says we should not take action, yet the last government presided over the worst energy crisis that we have seen for a generation. Your model, or his model, Madam Deputy Speaker, we have seen through the last 2.5 years result in record energy bills. Now, that is something that the party opposite were willing to contend with and accept. That is something that the party opposite thought was tenable. It is not acceptable to us. And our view is we have to wean ourselves off our over-reliance on global fossil fuel markets that are volatile and critically that will not guarantee lower bills. We are committed to delivering clean power, yes, because it delivers on our climate requirements, but critically because we think that is the route in which we deliver homes that are warmer and cheaper for consumers. At the heart of everything we are doing is ensuring that consumers who rely on energy, not because it's a luxury good, but it is absolutely foundational, have energy that is with stable prices that they can access and that they can afford. That is not the status quo, and it is not a status quo that we are willing to accept. That is why we're taking action.
Terry Jeremy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the Minister for her statement and commend her for the work that she's been doing. It must be said, what an almighty mess we've inherited from the previous government on this. Incredibly frustrating. The Minister will know how important this issue is to my South West Norfolk constituency. We are rural, too many people are on low wages, and we have more than our fair share of poorly insulated homes, and fuel poverty, therefore, is a real concern. Can the Minister reassure my residents, and I'm sure many residents across the country, that this latest news, this latest setback, will not delay progress for improvements in rural communities like mine?
Minister. Thank you to my honourable friend. Absolutely. Look, we are committed to upgrading people's homes because we believe that that is the route to deliver warmer homes that are cheaper to run. And that commitment stands for rural communities. So we want to move at pace with our Warm Homes Plan because we want to deliver upgrades in people's homes. But we're very clear that part of that has to be an overhaul of the system. Because if consumers want to go on this journey, they need to be confident that the work done will be of the utmost quality and standard, and that if things go wrong, we've got proper redress systems in place. That is not what we've inherited. That is absolutely what we must deliver going forward.
Christine Jardine.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I welcome what the Government are saying about the need to address this issue, and it will be reassuring for the very many people who have raised the problem with their MPs. But I wonder if the Government is also going to look at whether there is a wider problem with insulation generally, as has been mentioned, and whether you've had discussions with the devolved administrations about schemes in the wider UK.
Thank you to the honourable member. Yes, we have spoken to the devolved administration, we've spoken to the Scottish Government, we've spoken to the Welsh Government, and we are working closely and collaborating with them. It's important to stress that schemes operate in slightly different ways. So in the example of the Welsh administration, actually we think there are greater checks and balances that are in place in the way that we're seeing with schemes with local authorities and social housing providers. But I think there is a collective appetite and desire to work together because everyone agrees that home upgrades are fundamental to delivering warmer homes and cheaper bills. We absolutely need to get the delivery right so that we can make sure that we deliver the scale and pace of ambition that we have, but we do it with quality at its heart.
Nick Smith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the Minister for her statement today. Parts of my Blaenau Gwent and Rumney constituency are 1,000 feet above sea level. Our winters can be bitter, so good quality insulation schemes are really, really important. So can I welcome the Minister's emphasis on much better standards today. On a wider scale, can she please tell me how she's going to grow the workforce needed to deliver these initiatives for the future?
Minister.
My honourable friend is absolutely right that building the supply chain and building the workforce will be absolutely critical to delivering the pace and the scale of ambition that we have. We are already putting in place training schemes in order to build up the next generation of installers. We're working with local and regional government about how we build our supply chain. And I think a key part of the Warm Homes Plan will be making sure that we're working with a whole range of organisations from local up to national to build that supply chain and to make sure that actually through this we are delivering jobs, quality jobs that pay a decent wage. That's a big opportunity. There's an opportunity for consumers, but we also believe this is good for the economy, this is good for particular local economies, and working with local and regional government to make sure we realise that is an absolute priority.
Harriet Crofts.
Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for her statement. In that statement, she confirmed that the 39 suspended companies are suspended from the new solid wall installation under the scheme. Are they also suspended from providing other sorts of installation under the scheme, such as external loft and cavity wall installation?
Minister.
So we have suspended the 39. They absolutely, within government schemes, will not be doing any work on solid wall installations. The vast majority, particularly those installers that we think are, that Trustmark believes are risky, are being prohibited from doing other work. Some where we've got evidence that actually they are delivering, for example, loft insulations and other measures to the standard are being allowed to do that. But we are keeping this very closely under review. Trustmark are looking at the 39 constantly. There is a big onus and requirement on them to deliver and remediate the work in order to have the ability to do any further work.
Julia Buckley. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and may I congratulate the Minister on her sterling work to tackle this minefield of rogue companies who abuse residents' goodwill when installing those energy-saving measures by scamming them with these substandard products and damaging their homes. And would the Minister agree to work with colleagues in MHCLG to consider potentially extending the scope of this excellent regulation to also look at spray foam insulation? Because in my historic market town constituency of Shrewsbury, we have many beautiful older properties and many older residents. And it saddens me that it was elderly residents such as David and Sue and Mr and Mrs Balcom who were approached by ruthless companies offering spray foam insulation despite the fact it was inappropriate for their older properties. And as a consequence of the damage caused, these families have faced bill after bill for surveys and remedial work costing tens of thousands of pounds. Crucially, they are now struggling to sell their homes as lenders will not approve mortgages for homes with this faulty spray foam insulation. Now, in the case of my residents, David and Sue are now facing bills to replace their roof, and I'm very sad to say that Mr Balcom sadly passed away recently, leaving his widow to continue the fight for a resolution to this nightmare. Could I ask that families such as these be considered for the same enhanced regulation and compensation scheme? No.
Thank you to my honourable friend for raising the issues in her constituency. We are aware of the issues with spray foam insulation. A number of members across the House have raised this to us. We are working with MHCLG. We've done a lot of work, for example, on mortgages and working with lenders to make sure that there isn't a policy, a blanket policy of not giving mortgages where there is spray foam insulation within the property. But we acknowledge that there is a problem. We acknowledge that absolutely we need to strengthen the regulation and the assurance and the consumer protection across the piece with all energy efficiency measures. And that is why, alongside remediating the immediate issues that we're finding within ECO and GBIS, we're also working at pace to deliver wholesale regulation of the way that the system works.
Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Over the last 14 years, I've regularly raised issues in relation to the building industry and its failures to actually provide decent homes and decent quality. The one strand that follows this all the way through is the failure to properly inspect independently the work that has been carried out, to certify it and to make sure that it is fit for purpose. So will the Minister now look at making sure that all future work, not just the audit now, but all future work is properly inspected, certified and signed off so that the people that are receiving this insulation can feel confident that the work has been done properly?
Minister.
The honourable gentleman is absolutely right. There is a very poor and weak system of inspection, certification and assurance, and we believe that is one of the reasons why we've ended up where we've ended up. We are very, very clear that we absolutely need to reform that entire part of the landscape. In the end, we need to command the trust and confidence of consumers. Problems like this will fundamentally undermine that trust and confidence. So we are clear that as part of reforming the system, we will be looking at how we are inspecting work when it's done, we're looking at how we are monitoring what is being done, and critically that assurance so that when consumers have work done, they can be absolutely confident that it's work that's been done to the highest standard.
Henry Tufnell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I commend the Minister for her statement? I've heard from many of my constituents in Pembrokeshire who've been affected by these schemes with incorrect installations of air source heat pumps, faulty or shoddy building work, lack of valid warranties, grant misuse, and regulators like Trustmark simply siding with the contractors, all of which has a disproportionate effect on vulnerable groups. So does the Minister agree with me that it's only thanks to this Labour government that we are finally sorting out this system of failed regulation?
My honourable friend is right to highlight the problems that we're finding across the piece. We are very, very clear that the system that we inherited is not fit for purpose. It is a patchwork of disjointed, fragmented regulation and consumer protection. It is a nightmare, quite frankly, for consumers to navigate through, and it is not fit for purpose. So there has to be a root and branch overview of how the system works. Our priority is to make sure that if consumers choose to do home upgrades, it is as easy as possible for them to navigate through, and they can have quality. And I think the difference from this government and the last government is that we believe that there is a role for government. There has to be a guiding mind overseeing home upgrades across the piece, and we need to ensure that the system is delivering for consumers.
Liz Saville-Roberts.
Now, I really welcome today's statement, but it really isn't just about solid wall insulation, because it's not right that anybody has to take any Eco4 supplier to the small claims court to get recompense for fixing shoddy work. Trustmark as a process is intrinsically ill-designed to protect vulnerable people because it presumes that acceptance of a supplier onto the scheme is a sufficient safeguard. Can I ask, and I really take in mind what she's already said, that she considers empowering local authorities to be able to sign off work before a penny is paid?
Thank you to the Honourable Member. I think the Honourable Member is absolutely right to highlight the important role that local authorities can play within this. Now, what we know is across the country, including in Wales, where we have local authority or governments overseeing this work and providing additional quality and checks, we're not seeing the same scope of problems. So we are looking at this in the round. We're very clear that the status quo is not fit for purpose. We're very clear that we need to put in additional checks and balances and assurances, and we think that there are lessons to be learned by both what is happening in Wales, what is happening in Scotland, and indeed what is happening in regional and local government.
Clive Eckford.
Deputy Speaker, can I welcome my honourable friend's statement and congratulate her on the detail in which she's answering questions and showing how much she's on top of her brief. Only on Friday, I had a constituent come to see me who had a new boiler fitted and insulation done under an eco grant. This work had been subcontracted by the company that had originally won the contract, and I think this is one of the areas that exacerbates this problem. They clearly weren't up to the standard for carrying out the work, and lots of remedial work was required. So can she say what we can do to ensure that the people who win these contracts do not subcontract to companies that are not capable of carrying out the work, and then we end up with the situations that she's described today?
Minister.
Thank you to my honourable friend. He's right to highlight that one of the issues is that we have subcontracting within the system, and often we'll find that subcontracting happening 2 or 3 times, and so your starting client is not overseeing the work in the way that it should be. This is why we are very, very clear that we need to look at the entire system, and part of that is looking at who is delivering the work, how they're delivering the work, and how we're ensuring that there is proper accountability in the system. Because what is obvious to me is that the current system does not allow that accountability, and that is when consumers are put in a difficult position.
Tom Gordon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm sure the Minister will recall our very intimate adjournment debate on the last day before the House rose for Christmas recess. It was just her and I here, and it's the day after our Christmas party as well, so it was an interesting debate. The point that I would make is I do welcome sincerely the steps she's outlined for solid insulation. The problem that I have with this is that fundamentally, all of these issues I raised at that adjournment debate last year applied to spray foam insulation. And I would just make a few points in regards to there are blanket bans by some mortgage providers. Research by the BBC showed that 1 in 3 of the top 12 mortgage lenders do have such policies. And I'm more than happy to send that information on again. So there's a real issue of fairness and justice here about it's absolutely right we are seeking to restore and get this right for people who've been done wrong by people who haven't installed insulation up to that spec. But the same must absolutely be true for people who are victims of the spray in foam insulation scandal too, including my constituents Tom and Nora in Knaresborough. And that's what I find really, really difficult to chew from the statement is effectively that you've acknowledged that there are systemic issues, that Trustmark doesn't do its work, that there is an audit of solid solid insulation. But when I asked for questions around if there'd been an understanding of how many people have been impacted by spray foam insulation, I was told that there wasn't a number. So how can it be that we're counting how much of one sort of insulation has been installed but not the other? So just in that, the spray foam insulation, 250,000 people were affected. Will she give justice to them too?
Minister. Thank you to the honourable member. I remember the adjournment debate very fondly with just the two of us. And look, thank you for all the work that he has done on spray foam insulation and the campaigning he's done for his constituents. I remember very well and very vividly the stories he told of Tom and Nora. And I reiterate our commitment to work together to try and resolve this. The difference between spray foam and the schemes that we're talking about under EGO and GBIS is because those are government-backed schemes. We've got the data in the way that with the large numbers of people that did spray foam, not all of them were done through the Green Homes Grant, and some of them were, but not all of them. What I will say is, look, we recognise that there is a problem with the system of quality assurance and regulation across the piece. We have acknowledged that very, very clearly within the House. We will continue to work with MHCLG and other colleagues in order to think about what we can do on spray foam. The priority, as you will understand, is households that have had work done under ECO and GBIS, where if we don't fix it quickly, it could result in damper mode. So we've got to act quickly on that. But I acknowledge that there is an issue with households that have had spray foam insulation under the old system. And as I said when we had our debate, we will continue to work to think about ways in which we can resolve it for those households.
Phil Brickell.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I welcome the statement from the Minister, in particular her remarks around consumer protection. Just following on from the remarks from the Honourable Member for Harrogate and Knaresborough, a constituent of mine recently came to see me at my surgery to tell me about work carried out on their home under the last government's Green Homes Grant, and following spray foam insulation being put into their loft, they now do have a leaking roof which can't be accessed, as well as damp that was not there previously. And these issues have had a huge detrimental impact on their lives, and they find themselves unable to afford remedial works amounting to thousands of pounds. So what message can the Minister share with my constituents, and will she meet with me to discuss spray foam insulation under the Green Homes Grant Scheme?
Minister. Thank you to my honourable friend. I will absolutely meet with him to discuss spray foam insulation, and I will meet with a range of members because I've had correspondence, I've had PQs about this, so the offer to meet is more broadly because we need to make sure that we are listening to constituents. If it's done under Green Homes Grant, we need to think about the ways in which we get the system to respond in the way that the system should be responding. So that commitment is both to him but to other members across the House that have cases within their constituency where they're worried about this.
Vicky Slade.
Deputy Speaker, can I apologise to the Minister that I am going to raise the issue of spray foam as well as the Honourable Members for Shrewsbury, Bolton West and Harrogate. My constituent Matt was told that his house was unmortgageable with the nation's largest building society, despite paying extra for an extensive survey of his timbers to prove there was no problem. He has since been forced to replace his roof at a cost of £21,000 just so he got a chance to remortgage and maybe one day sell his house. But the concern is that the roofing companies told him that the market is booming in spray foam removal from the very same people who put it in, which feels like exploitation. Can the Minister explain how they're going to address this and why government sites are still promoting and recommending spray foam insulation?
Hear, hear. Thank you to the honourable member. It's important to stress that the government never recommends a particular solution. So the approach that the last government took and that this government has adopted is that in the end you've got to find the right measure for that particular home. So we never promote any particular measure. I acknowledge that there is a problem with spray foam. I acknowledge that there are installers out there in the market that are putting spray foam in properties where it is not fit for purpose. On the specific question of lenders, we have been doing quite a lot of work with colleagues at MHCLG in order to respond to that. If there are specific cases where a lender, despite the survey saying it's absolutely fine, are finding it problematic, please do feed that through to us, because we are continuing to work with industry. There shouldn't be a blanket ban. And in supported distress, where spray foam insulation is done well and is appropriate for the property, it is a good thing. But there are too many cases, I agree, where it's not been done well and it is not appropriate to the property that it's been put in. And so I extend the offer to meet. We know that we need to think about what we do in response. But let me end by saying this. The system we've inherited is the system that we've inherited. I wish I could change the past, but I can't. But what we can absolutely do is draw a line under it. And what we can absolutely do is make sure that we are reforming the system in the way that it needs to, so that this never happens again and we can command the trust of consumers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My constituents, unfortunately, have faced a double whammy of not only having defective cavity wall insulation installed, but also then having to be faced with being pursued by law firms like SSB for adverse legal costs. Consumers were badly let down by this process, and we need to make sure it doesn't happen again. So can I just make sure the Minister is looking at our future programmes like the new Warm Homes programme to ensure something like this doesn't happen again? And on the point on pipelines, are we working on a cross-departmental level to make sure we've got the right skills and training in place for future programmes? Because we want to make sure there is confidence in the system.
Minister. Thank you to my honourable friend. Let me reassure her we are absolutely working to make sure that the lessons that we've learnt from schemes that we inherited are applying to the Warm Homes Plan as we develop it, and that we put in place the systems of checks, the assurance, the advice within the system to make sure that consumers can have confidence. And we are absolutely working across government, because we know that building up the supply chain, making sure that we've got installers with the requisite skills to do the work well is an absolute priority, and we're working across government to deliver that.
Final question, Jim Shannon.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister very much for a very comprehensive response and for giving, which I think is really important. Equally important is the hope for all those people who have been affected, and that assures people and gives confidence to them and through their elected representatives in this House. In Northern Ireland, our scheme is called the Affordable Warmth Scheme. It's a different scheme, but the goals are the same. So it is vital that if shortcomings have been identified, and quite clearly they have been, could I ask the Minister that those lessons learnt here in the United Kingdom could be shared with the Northern Ireland Assembly and the relevant Minister in a helpful way, because if there's something goes wrong here, if it can help us in Northern Ireland to solve some problems as well, then that would be to the benefit of us all. Thank you so much.
Minister.
Thank you to the honourable gentleman. We will absolutely be engaging with colleagues in Northern Ireland. We're working very closely with all devolved administrations as well, and any insights that we draw as we build up the evidence base on what has happened and as we think about our response is one that we are very keen to share with other authorities.
That concludes this statement, and I'll give a few minutes for the front benches to swap over.